All right, welcome back to Ladder Legends Replay Analysis. This time we have an analysis of 3 games between InfestedZergyZerg and a very disrespectful opponent named, uh, I don't even know what his name is. We'll find out as we hop into the games. So, what was posted by InfestedZergyZerg was after just 1 game, this guy figured out how to counter my build with Archons. In the third, I tried to macro build. Since I haven't done any macro builds in 2 months, it didn't work out. Is there a macro build to go through for opponents versus opponents like this? I'd be originally doing 16 hatch, 16 pool, 17 gas macro build unless there's a better one out there. The other reason I need a macro build is for CTL. The all-in is already an aggro build, but I still need a macro build. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to look at the games in sequence, and I think the first game is BlackRock, given that this is the game that we win. But start to look at how we can improve the execution of the build, and then start to look at like the real way that we can turn this from an all-in play to a slightly more macro-oriented play, is by reading and responding to the opponent in game. We don't need to change the build fundamentally. We can still set up to do the build, but then just decide to commit to it less. So we're going to look at how we can commit to it less and things we should be looking at. So this first game we'll focus on where is it even whenever we're beating him, areas that we can improve and the execution a little bit. I think I've mentioned this before, but I would now, since I think when we initially talked, I recommended we go Extractor Trick into a 13 Overlord. At this point, or maybe at this point, it's probably best to just not do any extractor trick at all. Just make the Overlord 12 out of 12. Let the 3 larva bank, and then just make them. You actually get more money this way. It's debatable whether or not it's worth it to do the extractor trick at this point in order to not float 3 larva, but I always tend towards simpler, and it seems to be good to not do the extractor trick and just wait for the Overlord to pop. Would suggest you do the same. Additionally, even with this build, one thing in order to change the macro opener, I would go for a 12 hatchery here. The 12 hatchery will mean that if he decides to pylon scout us, we will be able to get our natural down anyway. It'll be useful even for this build. If we do that, we just can take a 12 hatchery. Then when we have money, we make drones all the way up to 18. We'll pull off the mineral line to make a gas, pull off the mineral line to make a pool whenever we have the money for it, and everything else is kind of the same from there. It's a little bit, we lose a little bit of economic efficiency, but what we gain in return is almost 100% chance that we will be able to take our natural. And this is very important in this patch, as we don't really have enough money to defend a split-based situation. So already this is one change I would say. 12 hatchery, no extractor trick. And then we can go and do the exact same thing from here. Okay. So here, this is all good at this point. Start our ling speed immediately. We have lings out ahead of time. Good. This is something that is going to be a common theme here, which is we now have 100 minerals and 50 gas, but we have not dropped the Bane Nest yet. Whenever these drones come out, we get to, like this drone right here, we're at 44 before this drone delivers. And you start to see yourself at 44 gas. You know that you can take this drone and start moving him to where he needs to go in order to actually drop the Bane Nest, so he can move him down here. Ideally, what you want to do is as soon as this drone returns, the Bane Nest should get dropped. Additionally, since he's done so much investment here, this is something that we can go back to and watch a little bit more. But when we see that he has right here, you see that he has 2 warp gates, 2 gateways actually creating stuff, we should feel very comfortable going up to at least 12 Zerglings in order to defend his aggression. Because we see that he has 1 gateway unit and he has 2 more on the way. So we can go up to at least 12 Zerglings to defend the aggression very efficiently. All right. So here we have 8, and then we go these 2 drones. It could be 4 Zerglings instead. If we have, as soon as we see this here and he steps on creep, you lead with the queen and start attacking. As they start attacking the queen, the lings come in to save the queen, surround everything, and kill it. This is the sort of thing here that, like, this little pressure by him made us forget to drop our baleen nest. So we need to figure out how exactly we could have got the baleen nest down on time by also dealing with the pressure. Part of it comes from prophylaxis, a prophylactic play, which is building the 12 Zerglings here because we see that he has 3 gateway units coming for us. And then part of it's just understanding what needs to happen, which is the queen needs to be standing close to the edge of creep, so she starts attacking immediately. Whenever the lings need to be staying in reserve, when it becomes clear that his units want to commit in, the queen can start kiting backwards. And when the units commit in, if the units follow her and commit in off creep, the lings come, surround, and kill. All of this should be pretty simple, as like this is how this is going to go, so that we know that in order to make this happen, you know, we can still weave in the things we need to do, like dropping a bane nest at the same time. So in this case, the other thing we could do is we could also just, since we have all this, we could have the queen very, very deep on creep. We could have the lings pretty deep on creep as well. And we could just know that we don't have to do anything, have the queen hold position until they come up to attack the queen here. We don't even have to kite the queen back. If they come up all the way to attack the queen, then the lings can come in and surround. Just one move command, and that, you know, then they're on their way, and then you can keep doing your macro, and then you A move whenever they have a good surround potential. But yes, having twice, you know, not twice, but at least 4 more lings here would have made that defense a lot easier, as well as just understanding how it works. Creep is very good. Lings are slow without, you know, slow lings off creep, not good. So kite back towards onto creep. Make sure that the focus of the units is attacking your queen, not your lings, because your queen is very sturdy. Notice that the lings, if they come and they get attacked first, we start losing lings very quickly. So we prefer all the attacks to be going on the queen, tanking the damage, while then we're kiting back towards, using our creep, and then surrounding. Okay. So this baleen nest is quite late, as we see now. But we do start building our lings now. We've got 4 lings, and this is partially because we lost lings early on. If we would have made the 12 lings, we probably would have been able to have quite a few more lings going across the map. Notice that the baleen nest finishes now, and the lings are way over here. We want them much, much closer.
Complete.
And they start morphing banes far after the bane nest finishes, and we've already determined that the bane nest was already late.
We evolved. Stuff got better.
So in this game, this whole attack is hitting quite a bit later than it could be, with less banelings than it could be. And we had a little bit of a snafu here where we did not appropriately read the number of units he's attacking us with and micro it correctly. Additionally, we do, if you notice here, we have 5 larvae banking, but we have a 3rd base being taken. We should be prioritize spending your larvae at all times before you actually take extra bases. So in this case, we should be spending this larva, and if we spend this larva, making more banelings as well. We see we have money to make banelings. All that is more of a priority than this 3rd hatchery. This entire time, this drone can be mining still, gives us even more money to make this happen. As far as the execution attack, this all looks pretty decent.
And they're out of here.
Not so bad. All right, let's move on to the next game. So I think the next game was potentially Sanctuary 3. So we'll take a look at that. So here, this is now a bit awkward because he knows what we're going to do. And one thing that I want to point out, I'm going to take a little bit of a disproportionate amount of time to talk about this. I don't know if you have blocked him in game, but as soon as, you know, an opponent shows some sort of disrespect or anything that's going to like pull your mentality away from actually playing the game, just go ahead and open up the F11 messages tab, and there'll be a little icon to block them, and just block them right there. There's no reason to consider this or to even have this in your mentality. Don't worry about it at all. Whatever he wants to think is what he wants to think. People aren't going to be happy when you beat them. It is what it is. Okay. So, there's a question now. He knows what's coming. What do we do? There's two answers. One, we can do what we did better and maybe make slight adjustments to have an even bigger punch to actually break through the gateways. Or two, we can identify that he's massively overreacting and we can choose to not commit so hard. So because of kind of where you've indicated that you want to be growing in, I'm going to go try on the second road, although I do think the first road is a very valid option as well. So in the second road, let's focus in on this game on this Overlord and what this Overlord should be doing and how it should be scouting. So ultimately, this Overlord should not be coming here, but should instead be coming directly here. There's in a new video that I show, it's possible that you could send the Overlord kind of here on the first scout path and then come over here. But either way, where we want to be going eventually is right here. And you do this, but I guess I suspect that the answer was because he went to the wall, he built on the wall last time, we wanted to come up here. But ultimately, we always want to look at this wall first, regardless. And if we see nothing here, then we can come up to this wall. But ideally, we'd go to this wall first. If we do that, either way, we basically see it anyway. We see that his opening is exactly the same as before. So the first thing is we want to be looking at our Overlord at this moment that it's arriving to his wall. And we want to see what we see. The first thing that we see is we see that he has one zealot already, and he's double chrono boosting. This tells us that he is putting an enormous amount of effort into having 3 units across the map, just like last time. So again, we should be more than happy to build at least 12 Zerglings and make sure our queens are in position to tank. If we're really having trouble, we can actually have both our queens. We can have both our queens inject and come to the front to defend. So this hasn't changed at all from last time. We see a base just going up very late. No problem. We do see extra lings coming out this time. Great adjustment by you, although maybe not quite as many. Well, do I see extra lings coming out? Am I crazy? I must be crazy. Not extra lings. Okay, so no extra lings. So this Overlord is potentially fine, but then we would like to prefer to see two more lings come out as opposed to the drones. Again, you could see an inject and an inject. Inject, pull this queen down to the front, and have both queens standing up in front of the ramp while the lings are sitting in reserve.
Another queen.
The same thing happens this game, again, where we do not actually drop our Bane Nest on time. So probably, I think this guy would probably die again if we just execute the All-in Cleaner. But let's just say that let's focus in. Let's ignore all of what's happening over here for a minute and just focus in on this Overlord. So this Overlord sees that 2 Adepts are created, and then it takes a look at what is happening next. There's no unit being built by the gateway at this point. At the moment that the gateways finish producing these 2 units, There's no unit being produced. Therefore, this overlord could very easily and almost should go hunt pylons, right? So we see that there's one pylon on the wall. At this point in the game, there will be one pylon and potentially a second pylon somewhere. Because he did this double gateway build, you see that he actually even needs a third pylon. So we know that there's at least one extra pylon. There might be a third pylon because of his opening, although actually this guy's just going to be supply blocked. Fun. So what we should do is we should go find the pylon, the extra pylon, so that we could then see what technology is dropped there. Typically, they won't drop their technology at the front. Sometimes they will, but oftentimes they won't because they want to hide exactly what it is that they're doing. If we're playing any sort of game, we really would like to know. In an all-in, we don't care so much because we're not going to change our plan. But if we're trying to play a little more reactive, this overlord needs to come and needs to find the pylon and needs to find what technology is being dropped. As soon as these units come out and they aren't stalkers, they are adepts, we know that we can make it back here and we can find the pylons and see something interesting. So we don't want to go immediately because if it is stalkers first, they might just make stalkers and kill us and stop us from seeing anything. But as soon as we know it's not stalkers, we know that the next unit, we can at least get in and find the pylons, see what technology is going to be dropped before the stalkers get out. So this is the first big mistake that we're making as we're trying to play more reactive. And when we do that, we would see something like a Twilight Council. So the Twilight Council here is a place where we could, you notice it dropped 4 seconds ago. Our Bane Nest dropped 6 seconds ago. This is somewhere where we could start to deviate our plans. We could say, okay, I know that you're going for a Twilight. I see that you have a battery already, which we would have also seen. This is something I know that I all-ined you last time. Let's go ahead and make a slightly different plan. And instead of committing to a Bane Nest, let's not have that and instead make a Roach Warren and make a. But before we make in this case, even before I make the Roach Warren, we still need to prioritize something, which is we have reached the 26 drone count. So at this point, we should be prioritizing making Lings. But since we have seen the Shield Battery and the Twilight Council, we are no longer going to prioritize making Lings, and instead we're going to prioritize making drones. And we'll make all these larvae into drones. We'll do an inject. We'll do a tumor at the front. And then, because we've decided to do a tumor, we no longer are putting all of our power into generating larvae. Now we're putting some power into building creep. The creep will allow us to be a bit more safe, but it also doesn't cost money. And we will use that lull in the fact that we do not need to spend all of our money on larvae in order to afford a third base around this time. So we'd come up here, we'd see the shield battery, we'd say, okay, we're not going to commit into extra Lings here. We've got 10 Lings. This is more than enough Lings to be safe. So instead, I'm just going to commit into drones. And so if we're planning on macroing out, we need to make, this is now the time to make the decision. We see the shield battery, we come in and we see the Twilight Council, we make drones, we make creep, we make inject, we make creep tumor, then we afford a third base. After we see the Twilight Council, or really just in general, we can then, instead of taking the Bane Nest, we can make a Roach Warren. And we know that he is going to be, with this Twilight Council, we know that he's going to be committed to attacking us with something. And pretty much anything he makes, we can defend with roaches. Now, if it is Blink Stalkers, we'd prefer to not make roaches, but this is getting too complicated already. Let's just, for now, say that everything we want to defend is with roaches. So we're going to make a Roachling. We're going to drop, again, I emphasize this one more time, inject, creep tumor, all drones, third base, Roach Warren. So this is the first big deviation. And what we're going to do is we're going to drone all of our base. We're going to drone this base and this base, fully saturate sound minerals, 16 out of 16, 6 out of 16. And we're also going to make 2 more gases. So we'll have 41 gases total. We'll have 41 workers, 3 gases, start a lair, start roach speed as soon as roaches finish, and then we will go ahead and see at that point, do we need to make units to defend an attack, or can we drone up the third base? If we can drone up the third base, then we'll drop a evolution chamber as well, and in this case we will get +1, drone up the third base to about 50 drop an extra gas, so now we're on 4 gases, around 50 workers, 4 gases, 1 evolution chamber, probably getting ranged, and then at that point we're going to roach print. We're just going to keep on printing roaches, until we are about 160 supply. Around that time, you can start adding on some Ravagers. You can add on a 4th base. You can start to look to punish him, taking extra bases and defend. So this would be like the adjustment I'd make in this case is I would say, okay, you think I'm going to attack you. I still do plan on attacking you, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go up to 41 workers. I'm going to get roach technology online. And then if it looks like you're more postured to take a 3rd base, then attack me immediately. Then I can drone up my 3rd base and take a 4th base and get an evolution chamber. And then I'll go up to when I get to about maxed out supply, I can try to attack you. So this will be since we've already. One thing I want to emphasize here is the biggest reason why our strategy is falling behind here is we're going to choose to not attack, or maybe we will, or our attack is like kind of, again, it's similarly late as it was before, which then gives him time to get a whole bunch of extra stuff in the wall in order to defend. This wall is still probably you can still take this wall on if you just continue to build up and attack later. However, once this attack fails, the game more or less, because we've continued to, if you look and you see that he has this much defense, you can choose to just not attack and instead use these units to deny a 3rd base and keep him on his side of the map, while you then drone up and do the transition that I mentioned, where we're going to like 41 workers, we're going to like a lair, we've got our 3rd base down, we get a roach warren, these sorts of things, and then we don't actually choose to attack in here. We can just take these units and we can control the space, right? We can make sure that it's difficult for him to get a base, and we only take efficient trades. However, if we're going to attack, then we need to realize that like we're never going to bust through this stalker with even this 10 amount of banelings. We actually need a larger amount of banelings, more like 13, 14, maybe even 15 banelings. And the goal then becomes to bust through the warp gate and the cybernetics core and actually fully bust them open while we continuing to bank links. However, if we're going this early without the baneling count we need, and we're already starting to drone out, we already started to take a base, we're not really, which means we're not making these lings that are falling up, we're not actually committing to the attack here, which is fine, but if we're not going to commit to the attack, we can't do the attack. In that case, we need to start droning, we need to start making our lair, we need to start making the roach warren, these sorts of things. We need to make sure that these units stay alive and only take efficient trades. We're at a disadvantage, technically, but if we play smartly, when we play to deny him from his 3rd base and make him cower in his base while we then just macro up behind while not actually losing these units, then we'll do okay. But the problem is, once we lose these units, even though that went okay for us, the big problem is now when we want to be droning up, we have these lings are coming, but they're coming late. So because we invested in the 3rd base, because we're not prioritizing making these units now when we can, these reinforcements that we make are happening after the entire situation here is resolved. So now we have 24 lings coming in when we would much prefer these lings, all of these lings to be drones, or all these lings to be much sooner so that we could continue on the pressure. This is either going to end by, this is either going to be resolved by these lings having to be here now and overwhelming him, or we're not planning on doing that, in which case probably we don't want to do the attack at all and we want to be making drones instead of lings. But now we're in this awkward situation where we've built a bunch of lings. They're late. They're not going to make it to this party. And we build even more lings. Once this first attack fails completely, we basically do kind of need to come up with a different plan, essentially, because the only reason that the Lingbane attack works is because we're able to like put all of our forces towards a singular point of attack and able to hammer. And by hammering, even the follow-up wave needs to hammer, right? We need to hammer every wave, right? The Lings need to come as quickly as possible. Once we have fizzled out the first attack, that is no longer possible. We're not going to be able to overwhelm him. And so we need to start looking towards a different win condition. One might be, again, to do the same thing as before, which is build these units, don't actually commit in with them, and then now we can then transition to stop making units and start making drones. Only use him to contain, only use to take good fights. Recall that he eventually has to leave this area. He can't sit on 2 bases forever. So if he's going to make it difficult for us to come in here, we don't actually need to come in. We can make another round of drones. We can take 1 extra additional gas potentially. We can take our third, and we can keep building forces and say, I know you have to come out and take a third eventually. If we make another round of drones, we're on like 35 drones, maybe 40 drones, something like this, or even go to the 41 drones and start making the roaches. The thing is, we know that he's not significantly outmining us. So we're not pressed to actually go in and do anything, as long as he doesn't take a third. We know that our army is very strong. It's so strong that we kind of think that we could almost go in and attack him. So instead of going and attacking him, just use it to control the space outside. This is a macro concept, right? This is how we play macro games. So the build itself, not so important. Exactly how we get there, not so important. But understanding the state of the game and understanding that he's on 2 bases, he needs 3 bases in order to stay up with us because we can take a third base. Therefore, I don't need to go to him. He has to come to me. This is a macro concept, and this is a way that we can adjust. Whether we do it with the 41 roach attack or we do it with these Lingbanes, kind of irrelevant. But the big thing here is, unless we are fully committed to completely obliterating him again, with these Lings and Banes, in which case this third base probably shouldn't even exist, and we should be focusing on making sure that we have our injects on, exactly when we do and spending it immediately. Then we can continue going for this attack. But at the moment that you have to take a third base, and because you're not spending your money well enough, and so you start to float money and you have to take a third base, then it's okay to start thinking about, okay, let's do a slightly later game plan. Let's add on some amount of drones in order to make sure that we're staying economically around the same foot. Maybe add on a roach warren lair so that we can, if he's building towards one tech that we're doing, we can start pivoting to a different tech. These things are okay, but the one thing that I'll note is that if we were just continuing to make Lings and Banes this entire time efficiently, we very well could have overrun him here and killed him. And so this is where the efficiency of, like, it's not just that we spend our money down, but it's like, where do we spend our money into? At this point, spending the money into the third base is taking away from the power of this attack. Even though, yes, this attack itself won't lose any power, the follow-on to the attack will lose power. And if instead that money was invested into Lings that were going to be streaming across the map now, they would already have been making. They would be done by now. They'd be streaming across the map. We'd come in, and probably around now the Lings would be joining the fight. So either decision is valid. Continuing, like, actually building, like, again, I do recommend a lot to, like, build towards the attack and to, like, see, like, how could I have made the attack stronger and execute even harder. And in this case, the follow-up, we're starting to lose the faith, we're starting to lose the conviction, and that's why the attack eventually fails, is because we don't have the ability to sustain it. We don't sustain it fast enough. But if we want to turn this into a more macro read of the game, we can say, look, you're pretty you're pretty defensively put up. Let's go ahead and stay back. Let's start making a lot of drones. Drop a roach warren in a lair. 41 drones. Only control the space outside and only take a good fights. And then whenever you try to take a third, that's when we'll kill you. But here, we're only now starting to drone these 5 drones. So at 647, after kind of middling, like the fact that we've taken this third already really gives us no value and no benefit because we've continued to try to all in, which is, but now we've split our focus. And so now that we've split our focus, Mac right now is going to be very, very tough. And additionally, we should still be aggressively posturing with some banelings too to deny the third base. We don't want him to take the third base for free. Absolutely not. If our units are aggressively postured around, we can also lings all the way around so that we can see things like this warp prism come out. And then we can make sure that our units are in position. This is a fundamental of a macro game. Seeing that the units are coming out. So having lings everywhere, that then we see the warp prism. We know that a warp prism is on the map. It's generally in this portion of the map. We can have lings in position, lings and queens in position here to make sure that this warp prism doesn't get any damage done. Good, almost got him. That's fine. Dealing with these sorts of rotations are also going to be kind of a big deal. But this is where, too, if we have a Roach Warren on the way, I would say Roach Warren instead of Hydraliston. Roach Warrens are beefier, stronger, better units. Then once the Roaches come out, the Lings can go back out on the map in order to like prevent free bases like this from going up. So here, we could just, we could probably have like something like 8-10 roaches out that's mirroring the warp prism movements along with the queens. The lings come out and they continue to posture aggressively in order to stop free bases from going up. They don't need to stop them forever, but just delay. And like right here, he tries to come out with a probe and take a base. There's no way that base should be able to go up until he moves his army out, right? When he moves his army out, that's fine. We back off. We make sure that we see when he's going to move out. And we continue making roaches. And again, we want to see where he's coming from. And we want to make sure that we're ready in position to deal with as many roaches as possible. And as soon as we know that he's trying to take a third too, by the way, we can also, that's the green light to drone a little bit more. So if we're at 41 workers and we're making nothing but roaches, we take our lings, we deny him from taking a third once, pull back with the lings, keep him alive. But at that point, we know he's trying to take a third. Then that's the green light to drone a little bit higher. Drone to 50, 51, take the extra gas, get the Evo chamber, start getting upgrades so we can keep up with his upgrades. So this is more or less what a macro game really is, which is saying, okay, are you trying to kill me right now? And if so, like I need to be making units to not die. And as soon as I identify that you're not trying to kill me right now, I start making drones, and I can take the units that I use to like do something useful, but like I don't have to commit fully. So these lings that I made, I can deny a base, but then I don't take a bad fight with them. I only take a good fights with them. I keep them alive. I have good mobility. Roaches with roach speed kind of end up being the same thing, where I keep making them because I don't want to die to your attack. But then when I realize you're not attacking me, I start droning, and I can take my roaches and do something useful, maybe because they have a higher movement speed than the opponent's army. So they can move away faster with roach speed. They can come up, try to snipe a base, but then as soon as they see that the army's chilling right here, they can just back off immediately. We'll get these little prods. These lings can start to like come up here and start to see, can I attack over here? And then when it's full, maybe they pull back. But maybe the fact that your link showed up here and they see the army, maybe the army moves this way a little bit. And that little opening that the army moves this way might be enough for your roaches to come and snipe the base and get out cleanly. This is how we play the quote-unquote macro game. It's much less to do with builds and much more to do with, okay, I'm going to make a judgment call. Do I need to make units to survive, or can I make drones? And whenever I make units to survive that it turns out I didn't need, how can I use them in little, small, effective ways to slow down the progression of the other player? So let's take a quick look at the other game, the last game that you posted. But the big concepts that I'm really wanting to hammer in here are continue from the same opening, and then use your scouting information that you get from your overlords and from the units that you made to make the judgment call for yourself. Is this a good fight or is this a bad fight? Am I going to commit to this fight or not? That's the real difference between an all-in and a macro play. Is am I going to commit to this or not? And so we can do this 27 Ling Bane opener, but we can choose to not commit. And then we can choose to macro instead. And if we do that, we simply keep our units alive. We spread rings of vision. We don't let them expand for free. We only take good fights. We drone to the next, let's call it the next point of power, right? The next point of power could be something like 41 drones, Roach Warren, Roach Speed, Lair Roach Speed. And then optionally, you could then say, okay, do I need to pump out roaches in order to survive? And if so, and you should always default to pumping out units in order to survive if you're unsure. When you become confident that you don't need to make roaches to survive, then you switch the roaches to be that sort of thing, and you can start making drones behind that. Okay, so here again, we should be looking at the wall first. If we look at the wall first, we see that he has, again, the double gateway opener, although this time he only has a single gateway making units, so we don't need to, we can just make the 6 things we want to make into Lings and Banes, if that's what we so choose to do. Notice at this point, we're getting very sloppy on our metabolic boost. Has not started yet. There's no pressure coming down at all, and we're sloppy on our Bane nest time. So, and we don't have our 6 Lings that we want to have across map. So at this point, he's sort of done the previous 2 games. He gave us a big excuse for why we were super sloppy on the execution of the all-in. We weren't quite sure how to deal with it, and so now we've talked about that. But here there is none of that either, and we're still sloppy on the execution of the all-in. So he's given us, even though he's quote-unquote hard countering us, in many ways he's given us a much more clean early game that we could use to create to pull off this attack more effectively. But again, what we see already, we see he's got the robo here, he's got the shield battery, he's clearly going to be a very defensive boy. It's completely fine to say, you know what, I'm not going to commit to this attack, in which case, even making the Bane Nest is fine here, but instead of making, once we hit our 27 drones, instead of making extra Lings here, because all we see, we could make 4 extra Lings, so we have 8 Lings total, 1 per gateway unit that he's made. But then instead of making more Lings, instead of making these 12 Lings, we'd only make the 4, and we could make drones instead. And then here with this second round of energy, we would go inject creep tumor, 3rd base. But again, always prioritizing spending the larva over even getting the 3rd base. Making sure that, because now the larva isn't just the attack, now it's the drones. And the faster we get the drones, the more and more we compound our economy. So we could already make the decision, if we wanted to not commit to this attack already. But we have 16 Lings. This is fine. I'm pretty okay with this. We have vision here. We have vision here. I would like even more. I'd like a vision here. I would patrol here, patrol here, patrol here, patrol here, and then the rest could be a little bit more aggressively postured up here. This is fine. When this stalker comes out and it tries to attack, so ultimately with the map control we have, when he gets high ground vision here, this overlord should retreat this way, and we should have a bunch of Lings here. And if his stalker comes out here and tries to kill, the Lings can surround and kill the stalker. This is No, so this is where we've invested in the units. Don't let him get stuff for free. Another point is we can have one or two. We could have like one Ling patrolling here as well. So if you have a Ling patrolling here, maybe like a Ling patrolling here, a Ling here, maybe patrolling here, a Ling patrolling here, a Ling patrolling here, Ling patrolling here, Ling patrolling here, and then our main body of Lings here. Now we will be able to see any sort of move out that he does. So the Lings that is here could see this Warp Prism. Now again, we know that we need to have units in position on this side of the map. So queens come over here and Lings come over here, so that he doesn't actually able to get this close into our base to get this shot off. Okay, let's talk about like why is our macro. So at this point, we have invested in too much gas, first of all. But okay, let's call this. Actually, I think this is fine. I don't have too. I think the gas was perhaps a bit. Ultimately, we always want to be 16 out of 16, and so here we're slightly below, and here we're 15 out of 16. So one could argue that we're maybe. I guess this guy's here. Okay, no, hold on. We're 16 out of 16 here. Okay, so actually, I'm completely fine with these gas timings. No problem here. One thing that I am thinking, though, is that before we get these gases, we should be getting a Roach Warren, because we want to get the Roach Warren to line up with whenever the, if we notice the build times, 57-second build time on the lair, and we have a 39 build time on the Roach Warren. So if we do the math there, then we do, let's see, 27 seconds, I had to do the math live in my recording. So 39 minus 57 would be what? 27, 18. So when we're at 18 seconds in lair morphing time, ideally we would be dropping the Roach Warren then. So no later than this point would we be dropping a Roach Warren, so that whenever the Roach Warren finishes, we would be able to make use of the lair and get the roach speed. This is a interesting point here, which is if we're going to go ahead and go this Bane Nest, like there's not a good, like we should lean into the Banes instead. So a transition, if we're going to already make we basically already knew we weren't going to do the attack. So I would argue that we don't need to make the Bane Nest, and therefore then we could go to the Roach Warren and everything's completely fine. But like, if we're going to keep the Bane Nest, you can always just drop an Evolution Chamber instead, get +1, and then when this finishes, we'll start Bane Speed, and we'll just play +1 Bane Lean Lean. So this is always a possibility as well. But ultimately, what I want to kind of really point out here is we have a Bane Nest. We end up going for a Roach Warren, which again is ill-timed with like the lair. And we have a Hydra Den. So we don't properly use any of our things. You know, we don't make any Banelings really at all. We don't get Roach Speed. We do get Roach Speed, okay. We make 5 Roaches, but then we're also starting Hydra upgrades at this time. So our money is all over the place. When this entire time, too, we have so much larva that we're not spending. This larva should all be spent on drones, or whatever the next tech choice is, right? And the next tech choice in this case could be roaches, then all this larva could be spent on roaches. The money that was spent on this Hydralisk Den could have been spent on roaches. The money spent on this Hydralisk upgrade could be spent on roaches. So we could have, you know, probably an extra 5 roaches out at this point, if we're kind of like super being on point. Additionally, these spine crawlers are not super necessary in this game. They could just be drones that are mining over here. or they could just not, but we don't really need these spine crawlers for anything at this point, or spore crawlers, excuse me. So the big thing is we'd want to have these roaches created. We want this roach speed to already be, mostly done. And then we want to have this ring of vision with these lings out to see this warp prism moving, which would tell us, okay, our roaches and our queens need to actually come over here and defend over here to stop whatever it is that's coming here. While our lings stay out front and keep vision in front of his base to slow down a third, also spot if he's going to be moving out at all. If all that's coming is this warp prism and we have a good ball of roaches, so we have those 12 roaches, 13 roaches that we already could have, then at that point we could consider droning this base. Because we already have accounted for the threats that are coming away. There's no third base coming down, no push coming out, and we have a ball of roaches to deal with whatever is in this warp prism, whatever is in this warp prism. So that's a great time then to drone up the next level. But unfortunately, we actually take quite a bit of damage there. So we're already kind of a bit below where we should be. And the biggest issue now is that we've sprawled all technologies out all over the place. We've taken some damage. And we're not really looking to fully utilize the capability of any of the technologies that we've built. So here, these lings should still be forward. They should be on a different hotkey. They should still be forward. Ideally, at this point, we have 43 drones. That's still probably fine. He hasn't taken a base, so I'd still be worried about dying potentially. So I think that 43 drones is more than enough, and we should still just be hammering the roach key. But instead, we're droning. We see that he does take a base. So again, this is probably fine to go up to 50 drones. Keep in mind, we've already lost 7 drones. So now it's sort of becoming a position where this one drop did put us in a pretty bad spot, that when you add in all of the kind of inefficient choices we made before that drop, now we're in sort of a bit of a dire situation where we really do need to get a ball of units together. And so I would say even stopping at 48 drones here and 3 gas is completely fine, and just hammering the roach key, using lings to sort of scout his army composition. When you see that he has a Colossus, he has a Sentry, we can just continue laying on the roach key. Maybe add in a 4th gas so we can add in some Ravagers, but roaches are the path to victory here. The active lings would also then allow us to kind of have we could use them to have a better view of where his warp prism is coming from, which would then prevent more things like this. And again here, we're still droning up to 60. This is far too high even for the best case scenarios at this point. He has a very strong ground-based army. He clearly wants to do an attack on us. So 52, even if we had taken no drone losses, would be kind of the maximum I would recommend here. And then just laying on the roach key. And so we go roach ravager to defend these sorts of pushes. And if he ends up not attacking, then we go ahead and attack him and just take him out, because what he's doing is not super good. So this is a situation where we want to lay down on the roach ravager key on a lower drone count, 50. You can go up to 66 if you have no problems at all. You see him take the base and you don't take any economic damage. You can maybe go up to 66, but then we're laying on the roach ravager key and using that we're expecting him to attack us like this, and then if he doesn't, we just counterattack him. So one of the biggest, I think it's hard. So as we start to transition, start talking about macro concepts, this is why it's very difficult to start to talk about how much drones you should have, when you should have it. But the rule that I really want you to think about is you clearly know that fights are good or bad. If you are deciding not to commit to a fight, then don't like if in a macro sense behind, you're not committing to a fight an all in, then you need to make sure that you don't go through with the all in fully. You just use the units to control space and slow the opponent down and get vision. Have a next drone count in mind. In my case, the two drone counts that I would give you right now is 41. I'll give you three drone counts: 41, 52, and 66. Okay, and have one additional piece of technology, probably a roach warren, that you plan on utilizing at each. So at 41, it's like a roach warren. At 52, it's +1. And if you go all the way to 66, then we can start, considering once we're spending all our money on our roaches and our ravagers, and we have some money left over, so ravagers you really only need probably up to like 6 to 8, even with like kind of almost maxed out army. So once you start spending all your money on roaches and ravagers, and you still have money left over, we can start to consider something like a Hydralisk Den in this case. Now, this gets difficult because this is all in the context of him going super ground-based Protoss. If he's going Skytoss, it's completely different. So we'll have to see games against Skytoss in order to really talk about that. But this is the idea versus the style that he's doing. 41, 52, 66, roaches and ravagers. This is the key to getting +1. Only one upgrade typically, getting it earlier. So once you decide that you're going to be droning your third base at all, you want to be making a single evolution chamber. Okay, this was a bit difficult. There was a lot that we covered here, so in these, hopefully that all kind of made sense. Please reach out with any questions, and I will try to answer as best I can. If you guys enjoy this sort of content, join Ladder Legends Discord. You can post replays there, and I will analyze them.